once, my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I'm your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 21st year of the award at the 25th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1952. Today's guest is writer and also co-host of the Academy Queens podcast. Please welcome Brandon Stanwyck. Hello, Brandon.
Hello, it's great to be here.
And it's a pleasure to have you. Like your podcast kind of got me into the whole Oscar podcast scene and kind of partially inspired me to make this one. So it's an honor to have you on here.
Oh, it's great to hear. When we started it a few years ago, we weren't sure if anyone would really listen. We thought we'd maybe have like 10 or 15 people who downloaded episodes every week, and it kind of grew much bigger than we thought it would. And you were one of our early Twitter people from the beginning, and kind of just kept with it until we ended recently. But we still keep in touch on Twitter, and it's been pretty great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just an honor to have you, and I'm gonna try and get Joey on soon enough.
Okay.
But before we get into the shorts this year, tell us, what is your familiarity with the Best Animated Short category?
So I'm not super familiar with it, actually, or really any of the short categories. Basically, the animated shorts that I'm most familiar with are the ones that would, play before a feature-length Pixar film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a few of the ones we're going to go over today, I recognize a lot of these characters that I would see on cartoons as kids. So that's kind of exciting. But yeah, it wasn't until a few years ago when I really actually started watching the nominated shorts as they were nominated. Because I lived in like a rural area, and our theaters never got the Oscar nominated shorts. And it wasn't until I moved to a more urban environment that the theaters actually brought them in, and we had the opportunity to see them.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I'm not super familiar with this category. So it was fun digging into these nominees from the 50s.
Yes, that's a classic tale. Like a lot of the guests are the same way. It's just like all they know is like, oh, the Pixar shorts, they stand to win, and they watch like Tom and Jerry as a kid. But it's like most people tend to ignore the shorts, and that's what this podcast is about, trying to shed more light on short films. So then let's get into these nominees. We have 5 this year. Our first nominee and the year's winner is Johann, directed by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. This is the 8th win and 15th nomination for Fred Quimby and MGM, and the 7th win and 12th nomination for Tom and Jerry. And it's a somewhat sad day, as this is the last time either Quimby or the cat and mouse duo will be on the Oscar stage. Yes, the tyranny of Tom and Jerry is coming to an end. The duo will have one more nomination after this, and Quimby has some nominations for non-Tom and Jerry shorts as well, so we'll save the full eulogy for later. But this is just another sign that big changes are in store for the world of theatrical animated shorts. This short is another attempt by MGM, like last year's winner, The Two Musketeers, to get Tom and Jerry out of their standard house and into some new environments, oftentimes going to completely different time periods. Before we saw 17th century France, and now we are in 19th century Austria. Jerry, here called Little Johann, lives in the home of composer Johann Strauss. He waltzes around to the music his owner plays, but this leaves him open to the cat, Tom, to try and catch him. But when Strauss leaves, Tom decides to learn how to play waltz, so Little Johann will come out dancing again. Brandon, start us off. What did you think of Johann Mouse?
So this was sort of a pleasant surprise. When you had sent me the lineup, I didn't really look into what each one was about. I thought I would just, find it on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever and just watch it, not knowing very much about it. And so when I saw Johann Mouse, it didn't really click in my mind that it would be a Tom and Jerry short. For some reason, I thought, well, maybe it's a Mickey Mouse one, even though Walt Disney wasn't the person nominated. Quimby was, but that didn't really occur to me. And so I find it on YouTube and I start it and I see the little thumbnail. I'm like, that can't be Tom and Jerry. That's not possible. Because I had no idea that Tom and Jerry cartoons were nominated for Oscars, let alone won. So that was really fun to discover because this was the first one that I watched. And I have a feeling I have probably seen this before when I was a kid. Like Boomerang. I think before Boomerang was officially its own channel, because I think Cartoon Network used to have like a Boomerang segment, like early in the
Yes.
mornings before, or maybe it was always a channel and my family just didn't have that cable package. But so we watched a lot of Tom and Jerry growing up, and I probably saw this at some point. But this is a really fun one. Really clever way of weaving in some diegetic music, having Tom actually learn the music so as to tempt Jerry to come out of his mouse hole and whatnot. But I really enjoyed learning that Tom and Jerry has a reputation with the Academy.
Yes, they are kind of the big dogs around the Academy at this time. Like you said, they got 7 wins and ended up with 13 nominations in their tenure, more than any other character, more than Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny or any of them. It's and a lot of the guests seem to have that kind of reaction. It's just like, Jesus Christ, who never would have thought that Tom and Jerry were such big Oscar players. But going to the short itself, uh, maybe it's just because I've gotten used to watching the standard Tom and Jerry formula where it's just them chasing around. It's fun. It's a good time. But I was kind of bored by this one because this one's a lot more plot heavy than a lot of other Tom and Jerry shorts. Like there's very little actual like cat and mouse chasing going around. A lot of it is just like Tom wants to catch Jerry, but instead of actually chasing him, he learns to play piano, so Jerry will come out dancing, and then he becomes this big sensation. And it's just like, okay, this is not that interesting. I kind of just want you to go back to the whole little Tom and chasing Jerry kind of thing, but instead we get this plot where Tom becomes a famous pianist, and they don't even like the ending is just like Tom playing and Jerry dancing, and then he tries to catch him, but that's like Jerry wins. But it's just like it's just very anticlimactic. It's not it tries to be different from other Tom and Jerry shorts, and I can respect that. But the way it's different just doesn't really grab me in a way I think they wanted to, or maybe I'm just different. It's like because clearly you enjoyed this, and a lot of people enjoyed this at the time, considering this won the Oscar and all that. Maybe it's just me.
It's true though that it's not as visually thrilling as a lot of the other Tom and Jerry shorts. They sort of do downplay the chase in this one, and it does become more about the music
Mhm.
and Tom's tactics for how he's going to get Jerry, as opposed to just straight up chasing him around. And I think I read that this was the 75th Tom and Jerry short, so maybe by this point they're trying something new, trying to somehow keep it a little bit fresh.
Mhm.
And I guess it kind of worked considering they did end up winning this year again. But yeah, it is definitely more heavy on the music. I thought the parts where Tom is learning how to play, where he finds his book on how to play piano, and it's literally 6 pages of him just playing a few more notes every page. And I was like, if only it was that easy. Because he
Yeah,
only has to take these 6 pages of notes, and all of a sudden he's a grand master pianist.
yeah, that it was a good show. It's just like they do have some few like non-chasing related gags that involve like Tom learning the piano or whatever. It's just like he learns to play a few notes of Blue Danube, I think it is, and then all of a sudden he's just doing all this fancy piano work and stuff. It's just like it is a good gag, and
Yeah.
like I think you're onto something with it being more focused on the music because I did read and just doing researching for this that like the short was unique in that it had a specific record released of just like the music from this short, or it had like its own narration and stuff over it. And it's just like this short was really notable for its music at the time, at least. And so that's something interesting. And you were right that like the this kind of period, Tom and Jerry's been around for like 10 years at this point, making a whole bunch of shorts. They are trying to get some fresh things going on here, and hence why they're setting it in 19th century Austria now, having Jerry be in the home of Johann Strauss instead of, the racist caricature that he's normally in. And so that's where we are with Tom and Jerry. They're
Yeah.
trying new things.
Has I'm not sure how to say his last name, Hans Conried. Has he been in previous Tom and Jerry shorts as the narrator, or is this a first we are
Uh,
aware of?
Not of the ones that were nominated. I don't think. Like looking through his filmography just now, he just seems to be. I can't point out any other Tom and Jerry shorts. I guess he was just hired for this one thing to give it a kind of heft to it. But yeah, Tom and Jerry shorts don't normally have narrators, and when there is like talking bits, it's usually just they usually just have like William Hanna or Joseph Barbera do a quick voice thing or something, or have some kind of canned voice clip for when Tom wants to scream or whatever.
Yeah, the narration sort of caught my ear because it sounded vaguely Bela Lugosi-ish.
Mhm.
Because I think he was going for some sort of Austrian Hungarian sort of inflection. So I had to look up who it was. I didn't think it was actually Bela Lugosi, but I was like, I need to know who this is. And then I found that he had voiced like Captain Hook and other notable um, cartoon characters. So I thought that was pretty fun, and maybe that gave the
Mhm.
short a little bit of a gravitas at the time.
Yeah, I like it. There's definitely this short is doing a lot of things differently to try and set itself apart from other standard Tom and Jerry shorts. And just judging by our two opinions, it works for some people, doesn't work for others. As
Hmm.
just, that's what happens when you try to do something different. It's like it can alienate people sometimes, or it can inspire.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else you would like to say, or shall we move on?
Oh, we can move on to the next.
All right. So our second nominee is Little Johnny Jet, directed by Tex Avery. This is the 16th nomination for Fred Quimby. The short is about a World War II bomber plane who can't get any work because all anyone wants nowadays is jet planes. He has a son, and shocker, he is a jet. He grows to hate jets more and more, and seeing a round the world race for jets is the last straw, and he joins a race that could kill him. Will this old bomber die in shame, or is there some way his son can help him? Uh, if you thought I didn't like the last short, you're in for a surprise because I hated this one. I just thought this this is clearly trying to be something funny, and it just none of the jokes worked for me at all. Like it's this very clear kind of it's this clear metaphor for soldiers who after World War II are having trouble finding work, and it's like when they try to reenlist, they don't want the older dogs who were or seasoned veterans or whatever, or as just the metaphor. Like, sure, it does what it's trying to go for, but it doesn't really work for me. Probably because I'm not there at the time. I don't really sympathize with the the discarded veterans at all, and the jokes that they're going for here with like this weird plain humor that they're doing. I This whole short just does not work for me. And the way in the jokes it's going for are not funny. I just hated this whole experience just sitting through this 7 minute short. And that's just how it goes. What about you, Brandon?
I was not a huge fan of this one either. Because for something that's only 7 minutes, it's not very concise in what it's trying to say. Because when it was over, I really wasn't sure what the primary message or metaphor was supposed to be. I feel like they're going for a few different things,
Mhm.
like fears of advancing technology, fears of the old ways going away. It also vaguely seemed like a race focused thing, with the guy's prejudice of the other aviation vehicles, I guess.
Mhm.
And then you also have humans. So you have like anthropomorphic planes and jets, and then you also have humans. And probably overthinking, but I was like, why do we have both? Why don't we just have all planes or all humans? Is there meant to be a divide between these two groups?
Yeah.
And it just had me thinking in all the wrong ways where I wasn't really coming up with answers. Every question just led to three more questions. And yeah, like you said, I thought the humor was a little flat. Like I got the puns that they were trying to go for, but it just kind of didn't amuse me all that much, I suppose. So yeah, not a huge fan of this one.
Yeah. On your point about like the human things, there's a point when the little baby jet like goes inside the bomber plane, his dad, and
Yeah.
it's just like, and that just spurred a whole bunch of things. It's like, why is there do people fly these anthropomorphic planes? As it's like, why is the door working? Why is the son able to crawl inside him without him even noticing? It's just like there are just so many questions about the world that were brought here. It's very similar to like something like Cars, like Pixar's Cars, as just like the weird questions that are brought up with if just like having these not really realistic, but like meant to be like similar to real world planes, yet also being anthropomorphic. Just weird questions that come up when you combine the two. So, and just like some, I think a lot of the jokes just end up going on for too long or just making themselves way too obvious. Like when the baby jet is first bored or brought by the weird robot stork or and it starts flying around super fast. You've got it's like flying directly past or through the two parrots, and they keep saying each other's names back and forth. And that goes on for like 30 seconds, where it's just plane zooms by, they say each other's name, plane zooms back. And it's just like, it keeps going, and it's just like, okay, I get the joke you're going. We want to move on. They go on and tell a different joke, but no, it just keeps going. And then it goes to the next scene, and the plane's still flying back and forth, or it's just kind of the same thing, except now the dad's annoyed and the mom is like feeding him plain food. There was something written on the box, but I couldn't really read it. It's just like, it just really drags everything out for so long and for a 7 minute short, you got to be a bit more snappy with it if you want to be effective.
Yeah, there was too much going on in this short for me. I was also trying to figure out what exactly the son was eating. I couldn't really make out what was written on the box, but it seemed like some sort of powder type stuff. I thought it'd be really funny if he was just like drinking a bottle of oil or something or whatever it is you put in planes, but they didn't go in that direction.
Yeah.
I thought it was really funny when the son kind of just crawls inside the dad and just rides in him as he's flying. It was like apparently bomber planes are also marsupials of some sort. Yeah, there's just too much happening here, and I really couldn't tell in the end what it was trying to say. I was trying to think like this is post World War II America. Is this meant to be a pro military sort of message? Are we trying to like transition into the new advanced technology that we're going to use to be like super America in this post World War II world? But none of that was really very clear to me.
Yeah, and like the short ends with like, so it's like the dad's in the race, he's about to crash, but then the baby jet comes in and like pushes him to victory using his super jet speed. And then it's just like so the jet saves the day, and the military is like, okay, we need 10,000 more jets. And so, oh, it's just like, is the moral of this to just be like, hey, don't be afraid of automation. Don't be afraid if you can't get any jobs. It's okay because it's good for the country. Hey, and it's just like, because it's like a lot of the questions and problems that the dad was having at the beginning weren't solved or anything. It's just like, oh, I may not be able to provide for my family or get work, but my son can, and so he can provide for me, I guess. And it's just like, I not, like you said, it's just very kind of messy, and like the messaging, it clearly has some kind of message, and it's hard to find a concrete one outside of America's great, war is great, technology is great. And it's just like,
Yeah, and it kind of implies in the end that the mother's main job is to create more soldiers,
oh yeah.
precisely 10,000 of them. That's like the note that the short ends on.
Yeah, it's like it was hard enough creating one, but suddenly she's knitting these 10,000 little sweaters for 10,000 little blades. It's just like, okay, she could do that. Sure, why not? Yeah, very bad, messy, short. That wasn't funny, even though it tried to be.
Right.
So
That
let
about sums it up.
yeah, let's move on to something better. Our third nominee is Madeline, directed by Robert Cannon. This is the sixth nomination for Stephen Bosastow and UPA. The film is based on a series of children's books by Ludwig Bemelmans of the same name, and the film is pretty much a word-for-word adaptation of the first book, also titled Madeline. The art style of the book is also very similar to UPA's style of limited animation, and thus many frames of the film look almost exactly like pictures in the book. So into the short. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in two straight lines. But then there was Madeline, the smallest of all. She would get into mischief and frighten Miss Clavel. Brandon, what did you think of Madeline?
So Madeline is one of those like children's classics that I don't really have much familiarity with, other than like always seeing the cover in the library.
Mhm.
I never really read them as a kid, and so watching this short was kind of cool because it was sort of fresh for me in a way, because I wasn't super familiar with it, other than that I knew it was vaguely about like a little French orphan girl or something. Like that's all I really knew. Um, but I can see how the animation style was like intentionally trying to be I don't know if understated is the right word, but they're not trying to be flashy
Mhm.
with the graphics or whatever you call it. It feels very illustrated in a way and tries to let the words do most of the work. Because like you had said, it's pretty much like a Madeline audiobook with some moving images.
Mhm.
So if you like the book, I'm sure this is a great little experience watching this film. But without much connection to the book, I just felt like someone was reading me a story and just showing me the pictures as they were going along.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Uh, I was gonna say something, but I forgot what it was. So yeah, UPA's whole the studio UPA, their whole thing is to try and move away from the popular kind of animation at the time, which is to be very kind of realistic, very kind of detailed and stuff. And they pride themselves on having a more stripped down kind of background, stripped down animation and stuff. And the anim like I said in the little prologue I did, the style of the Madeline illustrations is very similar to the style that UPA was already going for. So it made it a very easy transition to just kind of copy the the illustrations in the book into the film and just kind of animate the little characters or is going from scene to scene. And there's some very like I love the transitions in this short. They all just flows from scene to scene very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like it's also just gorgeous. Like I did look at the book before watching it, and it's just like the book is gorgeous. The pictures are gorgeous, and the film like it sometimes it replicates it like perfectly. Sometimes it does try its own thing, but it's still just gorgeous in its own way. And it's like that's what really got me through this because like the story itself is just a very simple kind of children's story. It's a rhyme scheme, and then you've got it just telling you the world that they live in, and then it introduces you to Madeline, and then her little problem with appendicitis that happens, and then it's kind of over. It's a very simple, basic children's picture book story. But I was very charmed by this. Like it just really I just really found myself just getting sucked into the world that they're presenting, and it makes you feel like a kid again. Like you're reading this story in like first grade a class just as an activity to do. And it's just like I was very charmed by this.
Yeah, I did kind of dig the simplicity of it, or the appearance of simplicity, because there's a very two-dimensional quality to a lot of it. Because like you had said, they're not really going for realism. They're not trying to like trick you into thinking that this is, real life in any way. It's very clearly moving illustrations. But then there are these sort of flourishes where they sort of sneakily break away from that. Like when Madeline is taken into the ambulance
Mhm.
and driven through Paris, there's almost like the animated version of what would be like a pan, a camera pan
Mhm.
that sort of goes around the city a little bit with the car as it's moving her toward the hospital, which sort of disrupts the prior style that was going
Mhm.
on in the minutes before. But it does so in a very sort of fluid way that makes sense. Like it's taking us into the next portion of the story. Because it kind
Mhm.
of gets dark there for a minute with the appendicitis. Because I went into this not knowing what the story was. I just kind of vaguely knew who Madeline was. And when she had appendicitis, I was kind of like, oh shit, what's happening? What's happening here?
Madeline's gonna die.
Yeah. So that kind of interesting. And then the style sort of changes with the shift in the story, but then kind of goes back to the world that it had established before.
Mhm. I love the little ending where it's just like after Madeline gets appendicitis and then all the 11 other girls visit her and they see that she has all the toys and stuff, and then at the end it's just like all the girls want to get their appendix taken out too. Just a very classic kind of ending to put onto all this. It's just very sweet and simple.
Yeah. Like I remember kids growing up who wanted to have their tonsils taken out just so they could get ice cream.
Yes.
And I was always like, I don't think you have to go that far to
You
get
could just
ice
eat
cream.
ice cream.
Yeah, I don't think you need that dire of a reason to get it. But sure.
You have anything else you'd like to say about this?
No, I think that covers it.
All right. So let's move on to our fourth nominee, which is Pink and Blue Blues, directed by Pete Burness. This is the seventh nomination for Stephen Bosustow, and second for the character of Mr. Magoo, the lovable, nearsighted old man who loves to confuse one thing for another thing and get into wacky hijinks. In this short, some stupid parents have decided to leave their child in the care of Mr. Magoo. The family also has a dog, and a robber tries to take advantage of the nearsighted man and rob the house while he's there. Now, in the previous episode where we talked about a different Mr. Magoo short, I was I did not have many kind words for the old man. I am not a fan of his shtick, and this short is kind of just, it's the same thing, like all Mr. Magoo's shorts are. It's he's blind, or not blind, he's nearsighted, and he confuses things for other things. And this short is no different. It's just this time there's a robber involved, and also a baby and a dog, and he confuses one for the others on many occasions and kind of stumbles into stopping the robber, which is exactly what you'd expect. But you would also hopefully expect that there'd be some funny jokes in here, but there are none. You're just left with Mr. Magoo wandering around. There's not much to say about this. It's a Mr. Magoo short. What about you, Brandon?
I pretty much agree. Is it weird that my first introduction to Mr. Magoo was actually the live action Leslie Nielsen film from the 90s?
That's not weird. I imagine
Okay.
that's probably a story for a lot of people who only know Mr. Magoo from that movie.
Yeah. So I didn't realize it was a cartoon until much later. Um, I don't know if I've ever seen a Mr. Magoo film before this one, perhaps, but I wasn't super thrilled with it. I mean, it's just a fun little frivolous few minutes, I suppose. Like, it's not a short that has really anything to say. It's just trying to, make you laugh and make you excited for the feature film you're about to watch, I suppose. Because
Hmm.
I would imagine a lot of these were played before features
Yeah.
in movie houses. Um, So, I mean, I thought it was fine. The hijinks ensue, but you can kind of pretty much, where it's going.
Hmm.
Like as soon as one thing happens, you know what the punchline is going to be, or you know what the next gag is going to be. It's not very unpredictable in any way.
Yeah, it's not like Mr. Magoo suddenly gets appendicitis halfway through and has to get rushed to the hospital.
Right, that would have been something.
No, I actually want that. I want a Mr. Magoo short where he suddenly has a medical emergency in the middle of it, because it's like they play with the fact that he's nearsighted, but they don't really play with the fact that he's old. It's just like
Right. He could be nearsighted and senile.
yeah, exactly. He is. Well, I guess that may be a little implied with the fact that he keeps confusing all these things. It's just like, but it does. It's just they focus on that one little aspect. It's like, come on, there's so many things you could do with Mr. Magoo. You don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again, but they keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Well, I suppose if you keep getting nominated for Oscars, you're just going to keep doing the same thing until you're not nominated anymore.
Exactly. As long as the money keeps rolling in, and it's like, and we'll talk about this later in later episodes, but just like their reliance on UPA's reliance on Mr. Magoo will end up being its downfall. And but that's how it goes sometimes. It's just like, hey, if MGM can rely almost solely on Tom and Jerry, why can't we rely almost solely on Mr. Magoo? It's exactly the same thing. And Pete Burness is the same thing as William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. It's very equitable, and we will have the exact same success. So yeah.
I found it kind of strange that this family just called him up to watch their baby.
Yes.
And I was just like, what status does he hold in this neighborhood that he's the go-to person?
Yeah,
this random old man that you trust to watch your baby.
And it's like, this man is clearly like, it's a regular thing where he has this problem with nearsightedness, and it's just like, you must have encountered this problem before, and yet you still entrust him to watch your child and dog also. The dog's also there, but it's just like, I think they just care about the baby.
Yeah, the baby who in the end has like a meat cleaver and is just like hacking away. I kind of like that part.
Yeah,
my favorite part.
Little Homer gave him 40 whacks.
Yeah. Did you think the mom in this was kind of like a bombshell in a way? She looked like Jessica Rabbit-ish.
I didn't internalize that, but yeah, I guess she was kind of curvy in a way. It's just
like, compared to the men, they put some extra effort into making her particularly attractive.
Well, yeah, it's like UPA is all about straight lines, but when you're animating, especially at this time, you got to distinguish the women, and so you got to add a little curve in there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Magoo short. Do you have any other fun insights? Did anyone else strike you as Jessica Rabbit like?
No, unfortunately, just the mom. I think I would watch an entire short about that baby doing just dangerous shit and somehow not dying. I think that would be interesting.
You might be into Christopher Crumpet or Gerald Boing Boing, some other UPA shorts. Well, those aren't about like dangerous children. They are about children who are more interesting than Mr. Magoo. So
okay,
maybe you should check those out.
Okay.
But yes, let's move on to our fifth and final nominee, which is The Romance of Transportation in Canada, directed by Colin Lowe. This is the first nomination for Tom Daly and the first nomination for the National Film Board of Canada, or NFB for short. Some of you listening might have no idea what NFB is, and as they tend to focus on two things that most people don't pay much attention to, animated shorts and documentaries. However, they are a great resource. NFB has a YouTube channel with so many of their films available for free and in fantastic quality. In terms of the Oscars, they are prolific as well. They have a whopping 74 Oscar nominations, more than any other non-American studio or organization. And in terms of this category, they end up with 36 nominations, with only Disney surpassing them and garnering 6 wins as well. When the American studios stop focusing on theatrical animation later this decade, it's up to the international market to keep this category afloat. And Canada is the first taste of that, as this is the first non-American short to be nominated in this category. And as for the short itself, The Romance of Transportation in Canada also won the short film Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival and received a special BAFTA award. The film tells the history of transportation in Canada, starting with the canoes of the indigenous peoples to horse-drawn carriages, steam trains, airplanes, and so much more. Brandon, what did you think of our final short?
Well, first of all, it's kind of impressive, all the stuff that this group accomplished, all their nominations. I had no idea they were so prolific and well recognized.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's really cool.
Oh yeah, it's a government organization. They get funding from taxpayers.
Sure. If you had told me what this short was about beforehand, I probably would have gone in not very interested because it doesn't sound super interesting. But watching this, I did find myself kind of weirdly into it. I thought it was kind of a fun little informative short, and kind of made me wish that we had more animated PSAs and things like that of this nature. Not shoddily done, but with some effort and craftsmanship put into it. Because I did for the most part like this. There's a couple, little questionable parts, like the way the indigenous people are depicted is probably not the way we would do it today. But, given the time period, it's not nearly as bad as it could have been, which is not an excuse, but it is worth noting, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did like this. I like the little gag at the end with the alien. That was cute. So yeah, for the most part, I kind of dug this one.
Yeah, it's got that very kind of Canadian, British kind of a tongue-in-cheek, subtle kind of humor, and it's charming. It's quirky enough. I do think it runs a bit long, which a bit long means 10 minutes in a category that's filled with 7-minute shorts. But even then, it was charming enough. I had a good time with it. I like the animation, which is also clearly influenced by you, or it takes a lot of influence from UPA. Hey, and it's just like, hey, it's a fun short. It's nice. Hey, and it's different too. So it's a nice change of pace when you go through 4 different shorts that just kind of try to do a bunch of gags. Well, not Madeline, but the rest of them are just kind of gag fests. Yes, and so this one's also kind of a gag fest, but it's also informative, like you were saying, and it's just it's different. It's nice. Nice. It's not the most engaging thing in the world, but I still liked it. It's good enough for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it does run a little bit long compared to the others, but considering it's spanning like several centuries
Yeah.
of travel history, it kind of makes sense. And at least I understand what this is trying to say, the
Yeah.
point that it's trying to make, and it has, a purpose, unlike a couple of the other ones here.
Yes.
So even though it does run a little long, I can at least say, the romance of transportation made its point. It made it clearly, and good for them.
Yeah, it definitely knows what it wants to be and accomplishes what it wants to be, which is two things that can be somehow hard to do. But good on NFB, good on Canada. Go Canada.
Yeah, I kind of just love that this very Canadian short was nominated.
And the fact that it was the first non-American short to be nominated. It doesn't even try, not something that even tries to be American, etc. It's just so proudly Canadian.
Yeah, it is explicitly Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that kind of endearing.
It's even in the title.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've run our course. And now that we've gone through and talked about these 5 nominees, let's rank them all. Brandon, start us off with your number 5.
My number 5 is Little Johnny Jet. The short's just doing too much for the amount of time that it has. And when it's over, I don't find myself super amused or really knowing what exactly I'm supposed to be taking away from it.
I feel the same way. My number 5 is also Little Johnny Jet. it was miserable for me. I did not enjoy a bit of it. Just a bad short. What's your number four?
Number four for me is Pink and Blue Blues. At least this one, it knew what it wanted to be. It wasn't really trying to be anything serious, but it accomplished being, a silly little 6, 7 minute Mr. Magoo story.
Yeah.
And good for them, but I'm not really a big fan of it though.
Yeah. My number four is also Pink and Blue Blues. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. It's just yet another Mr. Magoo short. And I know this is only the second one in the category's history, but I've seen enough of them in my lifetime, and it just tires me every time I have to watch one again. Number three.
Number three for me is Johann Mouse. I enjoyed this one in the way that I enjoy most Tom and Jerry shorts. It's not quite as exciting or thrilling as some of the other ones that focus more on the chase and the action, but I thought they had some fun with the music and made it work and did something a little bit different. So that's why it's at my number three spot.
My number three is also Johann Mouse. Though I'm little less charitable to it than you are, I just did not. They took out the parts that make Tom and Jerry work and didn't really replace it with anything I found all that interesting or funny or anything. It just kind of felt very empty to me. Yeah, that's it. Number two.
My number two is going to be Madeline. I really liked this one a bit. It's charming. It sort of grew on me the more I thought about it. I like the simplistic animation style with the little flourishes of, sneaky transitions and things like that. But I guess in the end, I also just kind of felt like I was being read a story as opposed to watching a film in a way. And so that's why I think it holds me back from being my number one.
My number two is The Romance of Transportation in Canada. It's a cute little short. Oh, not so little, but it just tells the history of transportation in Canada. It tries its best to condense everything down into a short 10-minute runtime. And it is what it is. It does what it does. And it's good for what it is. Number one.
Well, my number one is The Romance of Transportation in Canada. I liked this one a lot more than I expected to once I kind of figured out what the premise was about a minute in. I thought it was, informative without being boring. It knew what it wanted to be. It accomplished it. I also kind of like that it's government funded. For some reason, I find that kind of cool, and I wish we did more of that. And I guess I just want the Canadians to win something.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it to The Romance of Transportation in Canada.
Yeah, I wish America had something like NFB where it's just like we would like give a lot of funding to who documentarians and animators that try to get some more art and culture out there. But in this country, we are actively trying to get rid of funding for that. So, shame we can't have nice things. But my number one is Madeline. I like I said, it's just a gorgeous short. I was very, very charmed by it. And it's really just the one standout in this lineup of a lot of duds. And is the I just really love this. I've always loved this. I've seen this multiple times in my life. It just always brings a smile to my face. All right. So that's our thoughts on the shorts. And before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Brandon, or anything you'd like to promote?
Well, I guess I can promote the website that I sometimes write for. It's my own website. It's called fearsomequeer.net. It's my own little blog where I write about horror movies and books. I kind of have these phases where I write a bunch and then I don't write anything for a long time and then I write a bunch. And right now I'm in a write a bunch phase. So I'm trying to keep that going, trying to find my rhythm so that I don't have like a 3 month drought like I just had. But that's kind of what I'm doing right now. The Academy Queens podcast is pretty much concluded. It's still available wherever podcasts are found, basically. But as of right now, we're no longer putting out new content, but it's still out there if you care to listen to it.
And yeah, I imagine so we are recording this in October, so I imagine this month is very thought-provoking when it comes to writing about horror and all that. Uh, so yeah, if all of you at home, go and check out his website, and if you want to listen to another podcast about the Oscars, you probably already know about the Academy Queens if you're listening to this. Go ahead and just listen to all those episodes. They have a lot there, hours upon hours of content. And but thank you, Brandon, for coming on the show, and thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the Short Podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.